And now we get to talk about everyone's favorite topic, cold calling. So, okay, maybe it's not your favorite. There's a few things we want to remove from our dialogue when we're talking to somebody. You guys recall, we want to avoid sounding like an amateur salesperson. So, first one, remove, is Mr. Smith there? Think about when your mom's called you or your friends have called you, did they refer to you as Mr. Smith? Or maybe when they're calling you by your first name, hi, is John there? Kind of a weird way to introduce yourself. Second thing you want to remove is, how are you doing today? I don't know what it is, but it seems like every salesperson has that same melodic tune when they're calling people and saying, how are you doing today? What happens with how are you doing is one of three things. First, if they're having a great day, they can't wait to tell you about it. Man, I'm so glad you asked me that question. I woke up early this morning. I got my workout in. In fact, I finished that early. I got to go to the store, run some errands. Then I was able to get my kids ready for school. Then I got to do this or that, whatever. They can't wait to tell you how great a morning they've had. So don't ask that question for that reason. Other thing they might tell you is they're having a terrible day, right? My dog just died. My grandma's super sick. How are you going to have that conversation? If they're telling you how bad a mood or how bad a day they're having, it's kind of hard to have a sales conversation. So what's the third one? You sound like a salesperson. They already know you're a salesperson and they don't want to talk to you anymore, right? So stop asking, how are you doing today? The other one, is now a good time? This one is not necessarily a sales question, but you hear a lot of salespeople say this, so I'll share with you how we introduce whether it's a good or bad time to call. And the last one is, are you looking for a cash offer? We've seen a lot of scripts out there, and a lot of them have in their script, are you looking for a cash offer? And what we found is when you ask this question, they've heard it so many times, their natural response is, well, what's your offer? And now we're dealing with objections right off the bat. So stop asking if you're looking for a cash offer. Now, there are a few keys to cold calling effectively. First one is, you want to call as if you're their friend. Have you ever gone to the mall or the supermarket and someone walks up to you and they got this big beaming smile? They're so happy to see you and they call you by your first name. And in your mind, you're like, who is this person? How do they know me? How do I know them? Was I at a party? Is this a coworker? Who is this person? What's happened is this is a pattern interrupt, right? You're not sure exactly how to respond to this. When we cold call people, we want to call them by their first name as if we're their friends. Hey, John. And that will cause them to pause and pay attention to the call. We learned to stop asking, is now a good time? And the reason why was if they told us no, it was kind of tough to overcome that resistance initially. So we started asking, is now a bad time? And if they said no, we could continue. Now we deal with the interruption by just telling them, probably caught you at a bad time. And they'll let us know whether we can continue or not. The fact of the matter is, when you cold call somebody, we're interrupting them from doing something. And by telling them probably caught them at a bad time, they'll let us know whether we can continue or not. But usually they're pretty curious and it allows us to kind of move forward further along into the conversation. Another thing we do when we're cold calling is we sound exasperated. We want to be lost. So if we're trying to reach the homeowner at 123 Main Street, that's probably not your house. And what we want to have occur is they're going to say, oh no, that is my house. What's this about? Right? Versus, are you looking for a cash offer on 123 Main Street? What's your offer? Right? Initial resistance. We want to minimize resistance as much as possible by being lost, by being exasperated. They're going to want to work with us. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, refer back to our module on the lost puppy. The next thing we're going to do when we're cold calling is we're going to ask them for permission to talk to them, right? Can I take 30 seconds, share with you why I called, and you let me know whether we should continue this conversation? And they're going to say, well, what's it about? And at this point, we'll introduce our 30-second commercial. In our 30-second commercial, what we want to do is describe people like them, right? So if you're dealing with people in foreclosure, mention people in foreclosure. If you're dealing with people in an HOA that they're unhappy with or code violations, mention the code violations, right? So it might sound something like, the homeowners we worked with in the past were really frustrated in dealing with the bank. They were really upset with their city about all these code violations, or overall just don't want to deal with a realtor and selling their house. I don't suppose any of those apply to you. And if they tell you yes, and they start talking, at this point, Mr. Homeowner, can we just take a second? I told you I was going to ask you for 30 seconds. Should we continue? And at this point, we're dealing with the fact that we asked them for 30 seconds, and now they're telling us that they want to continue that conversation, which they do, of course, because they've said yes, right? It's their turn to talk. Of course, they're going to agree to it. The reason why this is important is if you don't address it here, and this conversation takes 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and they're about to go somewhere, now they're upset with you, and you're gonna lose any chance of rapport and working with this seller. Now you might have noticed we said, I don't suppose any of this applies to you. What we're doing here is we're leading with a negative, and when we say it doesn't apply to you, and they say it doesn't, we're gonna transition to, well, and you probably don't have any rental properties or pieces of land you'd be interested in selling? Nope, got it. And you don't know anybody that's thinking about selling a property? Nope. Thank you, have a great day. We've assumed this whole time that they have no business to work with us, and when they tell us no, no, and no, we can move on because our ego has not been put out at risk. Versus, are you interested in selling? No. Oh, well, you have any rental properties? No. Oh, got it. You know anybody? No. Okay, right? So we're not risking our ego, but if we're wrong and they correct us and tell us that they are interested in working with us, so now it's a good thing, right? I'd rather be wrong and have the potential to make money, or just be right and just move along. In which case, our ego is never at risk. And we're doing all these things here to increase the number of quality conversations. And that's how we open a cold call. And that's really the most important part. How you deal with the rest of the cold call is entirely up to you. That's just how we increase the number of quality conversations we have with people we're cold calling. Now, to end the cold call, there's a few other things you want to do. First thing is you want to assign homework, right? We want to increase the number of homeowners that are going to actually meet with us. So, Mr. Homeowner, before we go, can you write down 2 or 3 of your biggest concerns about selling your home to a cash buyer like myself? And as they commit to doing the homework, they're more likely to meet with you. Additionally, we want to deal with possible no-shows, right? Unfortunately, this happens. So we're going to tell them, you know, if something comes up on my end and I can't make it for whatever reason, I will be sure to give you a phone call. If something comes up on your end, how will you let me know? And they're going to say, I'll give you a call. All right, perfect. And you have my number? Or I'll send you a text message. That sounds great. And you have my phone number? Or I'll send you an email. Great, you got a pen handy? I'll be sure to give you my email. What we're doing is we're having them bought into the process of how they're going to cancel. Because if we just say, hey, if you can't make it, will you let me know? Everyone's going to say yes. So how will you let me know? And now they're going to be bought in and they'll actually let you know. And we have a policy in our office. We actually do not confirm appointments. So when you're dealing with a homeowner, we don't call to confirm, because what we found is by calling to confirm, people will actually cancel on us. So we treat this like every other home appointment. Think about yourself. If you schedule an appointment with an electrician, a plumber, landscaper, pool guy, do you no-show those appointments, or you generally make sure that you're present for those appointments? So don't call to confirm, because all that does is lead to actually a number of increased cancellations. And then finally, we set the expectations. Mr. Homeowner, when I come over tomorrow, my intention is actually to buy a home. I just want to make sure you're comfortable with that. Now, we're not saying that it's going to be a yes or a no. We're not establishing hard rules. We're just letting them know our intention is to buy a house, so that when we set the rules and expectations later on, it's not as out of the blue when they hear it later on. Something funny happens as we progress in this business. When we cash that very first check, man, it is so exciting. Even the second, third, fourth, and fifth check, we celebrate those. But after a while, we stop celebrating the checks and we celebrate contracts, which is fine, right? Because contracts will lead to closings. But what I want you to look at is, instead of celebrating contracts, maybe celebrate dial attempts. So bear with me here. Here are some numbers we found in surveying wholesalers across the country. The average fee we found is $15,000 for every assignment. Now, $15,000 per closing, we also find about 2 contracts to get 1 closing. Most wholesalers close 1 and 2. So if we're talking about a $15,000 fee, every signed contract is worth $7,500, which is pretty good. We also know that most wholesalers take about 3 appointments to get 1 contract. So that means that every 3 appointments you go on is resulting in $7,500. That means every 1 appointment is $2,500. So every booked appointment you get, or every held appointment, that's $2,500. We should celebrate those, but we don't. But let's take a step further. We also know it takes about 100 conversations to get 1 appointment. So $15,000 broken down to 2 contracts, 3 appointments, 100 conversations. It's about $25 per conversation. Now those conversations seem a little more worthwhile. We also know it takes about 10 dials to get 1 conversation. So broken out, that's about $2.50 per dial. So knowing you're making about $2.50 per dial, how many dials can you make per hour? Let's say my numbers are totally wrong, right? It's not $2.50 per dial, it's only $1 a dial. Could you fit in 60 dials an hour, 100 dials an hour, right? 100 dials an hour would result in basically $200,000 a year. Could you do that? Now let's pretend you're running a team. So what we have in our organization is we want to celebrate rejection. So we don't look at 15,000 per contract, we look at dollars per no. And we want to reward as many no's as we get in our office, right? The more no's we get means more yeses we get. So we want to celebrate rejection in our office. As a matter of fact, on our team, whoever has the most dials in a week gets a free lunch on us every single week. What about inbound calls? So there's a few things we want to do in inbound calls. First thing is we want to ask them, how did you hear about us? Now, I know that you know where they came from. We've got CallRail or whatever tools we're using to track the numbers, but they don't know that we know where they called from, right? So how did you hear about us? They'll tell us it was a piece of mail, TV, billboard, whatever. Got it. And what about that advertisement caught your attention? They'll say, you know, the as is, cash offer, post possession, whatever. I see. Okay. And what about that applies to you? Or how does that apply to you? And what we know now is what their actual pain point is, right? I need a cash close because I'm moving here, or I need it as is because my house is in terrible condition. I need a post possession because I don't know where I'm going to live after this. Whatever it is, now we know what their circumstances are and their pain, and that is how we're going to move forward. And now that we know what's important to them, we know how to proceed with the appointment when we actually meet with them in person. Now, after we ask those 3 questions, how did you hear about us? What about that ad caught your attention? And how does that apply to you? We're going to let them know, can I share with you how these calls normally go? And we're setting the rules to have this conversation. And lastly, if you're making a lot of cold calls, you're going to get a lot of callbacks. Now, if you're like me, you might be out in the field, right? People are calling you back and you have no idea where they're calling you from. So the great thing is you don't have to know, right? And what we used to do is we let them know, hey, I'm not in front of a computer right now. Can I give you a call back when I'm in front of a computer? And they'll agree to that. And what happens? When you call them again, you'll never reach them again. So we got to take advantage of the opportunity once they're in front of us. So we use a 30-second commercial. You know, I'm not sure why we called you, but people we worked with in the past were dealing with foreclosure, angry with the city, blah, blah, blah. We give them the 30-second commercial. I don't suppose any of those apply to you. And they say no, right? We do the same exact thing to get them re-engaged. So that's how we deal with callbacks, because we don't know who we're calling because we're calling a whole lot of people.